He helped her carry bags, not knowing she's the owner of the whole grocery chain. Before we begin, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you're into emotional love stories, full of twists and heartwarming endings, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you help this space grow and continue sharing stories that truly move people. It was a gray afternoon in Cincinnati. The heavy sky poured a steady, thin rain over the wet streets on the east side of the city. A cold wind blew, dragging damp leaves along the cracked sidewalks while people hurried by, hidden under umbrellas or makeshift covers. In the middle of that gray setting, she stood out. A young woman with dark brown, wavy hair hanging loose struggled to balance 5 grocery bags that looked like they could rip open at any second. The thin coat she wore was no match for the wind, and her hands trembled more from the cold than from effort. Her name was Elena. She was around 30, light brown skin, delicate features, though marked by a tired expression that revealed more than just a hard day. She wore simple jeans, worn-out boots, and a shirt that had clearly seen better days. She was soaked, alone, and invisible to most people, except to him. Logan Carter was coming from the opposite direction, pushing his old bike, jeans stained with grease, and a dingy hoodie clinging to his body from the rain. He was 35, fair skin, slightly tanned from working outdoors, moss-green eyes that always seemed to carry the weight of the world, and a rough stubble. His expression held the steadiness of someone who's fallen many times but never stayed down. When he saw Eleanor, he stopped. The bags tore open, cans rolled across the sidewalk. A cereal box fell apart in the dirty water of the curb. Eleanor knelt down, trying to save what she could, but it was no use. Her eyes welled up with frustration, with shame. That's when Logan crouched beside her, not saying anything at first. He started picking up the groceries carefully, like it was the most important thing in the world at that moment. She looked at him, surprised. "You didn't have to." "I know," he replied, looking at her kindly. "But no one should have to carry everything alone." His voice was deep but warm. There was a rare honesty in it. Elena hesitated before letting a tear fall. She couldn't tell what hurt more, the cold or that unexpected act of kindness. "Thank you," she murmured. He smiled, still crouched down, placing the remaining groceries into a makeshift cardboard bag. "My name's Logan," he said. "You live around here?" "I do now," she replied, eyes downcast. "Just got here. I'm starting from scratch." Logan nodded slightly, like someone who understood more than they let on. "Welcome. This part of the city isn't pretty, but sometimes it hides good surprises." She gave a faint smile, the first one all day. "And do you always help strangers like this?" she asked. "Not always," he said, "but today felt like I should." For a second their eyes locked. A silence full of meaning settled between them. Something was being built there, even if neither of them knew exactly what. He helped her up and carried the bags to the rusty gate of the small building where she was staying. Before they said goodbye, Elena looked at him again. "Really, thank you, Logan. That was different." "Maybe it's because no one sees you the way you deserve," he replied. "But I saw you, and no one can take that from me." Elena walked inside, still feeling the warmth of that look. Logan stood in the rain, holding his bike, as if that encounter had changed something inside him too. And it had. They didn't know it yet. But that simple gesture would spark the biggest twist of their lives. The rain kept falling, fine but sharp, like liquid needles touching the skin. The Cincinnati sky remained heavy, painted in a deep gray that seemed to drench everything. In melancholy, Elena, still standing under the small awning of the building where she was staying, watched as Logan slowly rode off with his bike. He moved slowly, as if waiting for her to say something, anything that would make him stop, but she didn't say anything. She went inside, clutching the now soaked bags to her chest. She climbed the 2 flights of stairs in silence, feeling the cold water trickling down her neck, mixed with the tears she could no longer hold back. That simple gesture, someone stopping, someone seeing her, had stirred something in her that had been asleep for a long time. Hours later, the rain let up. The sky brightened timidly, painted in pale amber tones, reflecting off the dirty puddles on the asphalt. Logan was coming back from an extra shift at the recycling warehouse. His shoulders ached, and his fingers were cut by tiny slivers of glass and cardboard. But his mind kept drifting back to that woman. The way she held the bags, trying not to draw attention. The way her eyes seemed to avoid the world, but at the same time begged to be seen. And more than anything, her words, "You're the first person who's really looked at me in days." The next day, with the sun now shyly showing in the sky, Elena decided to head out early. She put on the same dark jeans, now dry, and a beige sweater that still carried the smell of the place she was staying, a mix of old wood and loneliness. She had spent the night tossing and turning, listening to the cars outside and wondering who that man was who appeared out of nowhere and asked for nothing in return. She walked slowly through the neighborhood streets. She passed by the same grocery store where she had shopped the day before. The old sign flickered with a glitch, but inside, everything looked busy. That's when she saw him. Logan was standing next to his bicycle, now leaning against a post. He was talking to an elderly woman, handing her a reusable bag full of groceries. The woman hugged him like she'd known him for years. Elena watched from between 2 cars. "He's not just kind to me," she murmured to herself. "He's like that with everyone." She gathered her courage, took 2 steps, and stepping into a puddle, caught his attention. Logan turned immediately, his face lit up in surprise. "Elena?" She smiled a little awkwardly. "I was just passing by. Then this neighborhood got lucky today." She laughed, and he came closer. For a moment, neither of them said anything. It was as if the city had paused. "Want to grab a coffee?" he asked, pointing to a small food truck across the street. She hesitated, but something in her chest nudged her forward. "I do." As they walked side by side, Elena said, almost in a whisper, "Yesterday, I felt alive for the first time in months. I don't think you even realize what you did for me." Logan glanced at her, that calm yet intense look in his eyes. Maybe it was just fate giving a little push. Elena looked at him. The wind tousled the damp strands of her hair. Her eyes were watery again, but this time not from pain. It was something deeper. It was recognition. It was a heart beginning to beat again for more than just survival. At the makeshift table by the food truck, between 2 steaming coffees and a slice of dry cake, Elena looked at Logan and said firmly, "You're the first person who's made me want to stay. Not just in this city, in the world." Logan swallowed hard. Then this city just got a lot better, and there, in that small encounter, a quiet spark was born. It wasn't love yet, it was a seed, but it was already pulsing with strength. What neither of them knew was that this ordinary afternoon would mark the beginning of a path filled with trials, revelations, and choices. Because Elena carried a secret. And when that secret came to light, everything would be on the line, including this feeling that had barely begun. The late morning sun gently warmed the sidewalk, still damp from the night before, slowly drying the traces of rain. The neighborhood came to life again, with the quiet movement of an unhurried Saturday. Elena walked with a cloth bag slung over her shoulder, wearing a light blue linen shirt and beige pants cuffed at the ankles. Her dark brown hair was tied in a loose bun, and the light blush on her face from walking hinted that, despite the wounds inside, something in her was starting to breathe again. She crossed the street toward the neighborhood market. The same, one where she had gone unnoticed days before. A car stopped to let her cross, and then she saw him, On the other side of the street, Logan was pushing a shopping cart and laughing at something his daughter had said. The girl, around 8 years, old fair-skinned, with brown hair tied in 2 messy buns, swung her legs while sitting in the front of the cart. She wore a light pink jacket stained with paint and little blue rubber boots. She had a sweet, bright look and laughed with her whole mouth, the way only children who know love can laugh. Elena stopped, hesitant. Part of her wanted to turn around, but Logan's eyes found hers in the middle of the crosswalk, as if he sensed her before even seeing her, and then he smiled. A smile that asked for nothing, a smile that welcomed. "Hi, Elena. Remember me?" he said, crossing the street with the cart, smiling. She smiled back more shyly, her heart speeding up for reasons she couldn't name. "Hard to forget someone who shows up when the world feels like it's falling apart," she replied playfully, but her eyes were full of truth. Lily, curious, leaned forward and asked, "Is she your friend, Daddy?" Before he could answer, Eleanor crouched down to the girl's level. "I can be, if you'll let me." Lily looked at her father, then back at Eleanor, and reached out her hand naturally. "I'm Lily, and I like people who talk while looking you in the eye." Elena smiled, her eyes filling with tears. She was just a child. But in that sentence, there was more honesty than Elena had heard in countless boardrooms full of suits and agendas. "I was going to the park. I brought a few sandwiches and some apple juice. Nothing fancy, but if you'd like to share," Elena said, trying to hide the nervousness in her offer. Logan exchanged a quick glance with his daughter, who nodded excitedly. "A sandwich in the park with good people? I think we just won the day." The three of them walked to the small neighborhood park. It was simple. A grassy field, a few rusty swings, and a wooden table with crooked benches. But the clear sky and Lily's laughter filled the place with something more precious than any luxurious view. Eleanor opened her small backpack and took out 2 sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, 3 plastic cups, and a thermos of juice. Logan pulled some cinnamon candies from his pocket. "It's not much, but it's what we've got," she said, a little shyly. Logan took the sandwich carefully, as if it were a rare gift. "And what we've got is more than enough." As they ate, they talked about simple things. Lily told them about a dream she had the night before, a pink dragon that wanted to live inside a shoebox. Eleanor laughed so hard she lost her breath. Logan watched the scene quietly, his eyes fixed on the sparkle in hers. After eating, Lily ran over to the swings. Eleanor and Logan stayed seated on the wooden bench, watching the girl play. "She's beautiful and seems really happy," Elena said, her voice tight. Logan looked at his daughter tenderly. "She's my world, and, you know, it's strange to say, but I think she felt something in you, like she already trusts you." Eleanor looked away. Her fingers played with the strap of the backpack on her lap. "Maybe because I'm just a kid too, trying to feel safe." There was a silence full of meaning, a silence that wasn't awkward, but intimate. Suddenly, Lily ran back and jumped into Elena's lap with the ease of someone who belongs. "Can you be part of our family for a day?" she asked, laying her head on Elena's shoulder. Elena froze, swallowed hard, closed her eyes for a second, trying to hold back the lump in her throat. When she answered, her voice came out as a whisper. "I forgot what it feels like to be home, even without walls." Logan didn't say anything. He simply placed his hand over hers. Not as someone claiming ownership, but as someone recognizing pain and offering shelter. And there, under the shade of a crooked tree and the sound of creaky swings, something began to take root. Something simple. Something real. What Elena didn't know was that this improvised lunch was about to become a turning point, because soon the walls she had worked so hard to build would collapse. And Logan would have to decide whether to stay, even knowing everything. The following week arrived with a dry cold, typical of late fall in Cincinnati. Orange leaves piled up on the sidewalks like memories of what once was, while the city moved on at its usual pace, silently filled with invisible stories. Elena clutched the makeshift badge in the pocket of her grey apron. The store was a small unit, with cramped shelves, fluorescent lights, and speakers that played old hits at low volume. No one there knew who she really was. To her co-workers, she was just Elena from the stockroom, the woman who arrived early and never complained about lifting boxes. She had quietly gotten the job using only her first name and an alternate ID number from a field program created by her own family's foundation, something no one there would ever connect to an heiress. The goal was clear: to feel firsthand how the employees of the chain lived, without perks, without filters. But what she didn't expect was to run into him again. That Tuesday, late in the morning, while arranging cereal boxes in aisle 4, she heard the familiar sound of a bike being parked out front. Her heart sped up before she even turned around, and then he walked in, Logan Carter, wearing his worn brown jacket and faded blue cap, pushing the same cart as always. He looked at the shelves like he was searching for something specific, but it wasn't canned goods or deals. It was her. Elena pretended to organize a product while watching him from the corner of her eye. When he approached the aisle, pretending to be interested in cookies, she couldn't resist. "If you're looking for smiles on sale, they ended yesterday." Logan turned and gave a wide smile, like her presence alone had made the day worth it. "Ah, so that's why I haven't found any since I walked in." They both laughed, then quickly looked away. There was a carefulness in their exchange, like they were feeling out the edges of something still forming. In the weeks that followed, their meetings became routine. Logan showed up almost every day at the end of her shift. He'd buy something, bread, milk, batteries, just to see her. Elena noticed, but never said anything. Instead, she started leaving small folded notes inside the items he picked. Up in a box of tea, he found, "Careful, this tea might warm more than just your hands." In a loaf of bread, "If you want to split a sandwich again, you know where to find me." Logan would laugh on his walk home, and Lily had already caught on. "Is it the lady with the sad eyes who makes Daddy smile?" That Friday, as the last customers were leaving and Elena was closing the register, she saw the same blue cap outside the window. Logan was there, leaning against the post, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the automatic door. She walked over with her apron folded over her arm. "You're always around here, Carter?" she asked with a curious smile. He looked up, calm and warm. "Maybe I'm addicted to seeing you smile." Her chest tightened. A part of her wanted to run, and at the same time, to stay. "Careful. That could be dangerous," she said, trying to hide the emotion. "I've dealt with danger since I became a dad. This here," he said, pointing to his heart, "is the kind of risk I'd choose again." The cold breeze blew a strand of her hair over her face. Without thinking, Logan gently brushed it aside. For a moment, the city disappeared. There was only the two of them, standing on that sidewalk, lit by the yellow glow of the storefront sign. But suddenly, a black car stopped across the street. The tinted windows hid whoever was inside. Elena froze as she noticed the company logo on a discreet sticker in the corner of the windshield. Her world, the one she had left behind, was closer than she thought. "Everything okay?" Logan asked, noticing the change in her face. "Yes. Just thought I saw something familiar." She smiled, but her eyes said otherwise, and as he watched her walk away, unaware of the weight she carried on her shoulders, Logan had a strange feeling that there was much more to this woman than she let on. He just didn't know. He was falling for the one who owned it all. The cold that night felt sharper than usual, like the entire city had been dipped in silence. A power outage had hit part of the neighborhood, leaving homes in the dark with only flickering streetlights and distant headlights for light. Neighbors murmured about the outage, but in the small wooden house at the end of Perry Street, Something different was about to happen. Logan lit the emergency candles he kept, one on the kitchen counter, two in the middle of the table, and a third balanced on an empty corn can now serving as a candle holder. The house was modest, peeling walls, creaky wooden floors, old furniture, inherited from his grandmother, but everything radiated warmth. Lily's drawings covered the fridge door, mismatched pillows sat on the couch, and the comforting smell of melted cheese filled the air. Elena arrived with little Lily through the back door, guided by a weak flashlight. "Sorry for the setup," Logan said with a gentle smile as he saw them walk in. "The lights are out, but dinner's still on." Lily ran to the table and let out a wow when she saw the candles. "It looks like a storybook castle." Elena laughed and took off her coat. She wore a cream-colored sweater that complemented her light brown skin and left her collarbone subtly visible. Her hair, tied in a loose bun, was slightly messy from the wind, but her brown eyes sparkled like embers as she stepped into that place where everything seemed more alive. Logan pointed to a chair with gentlemanly charm. "Tonight's special dish, Carter-style mac and cheese with a touch of butter and good intentions." "Sounds perfect," Elena said, taking her seat. "I've never had dinner by candlelight with a laughing child at the table. It's different." "It's better," Logan replied, serving the portions carefully, "because it's real." During dinner, the laughter came easily. Lily said she wanted to be an inventor of perfumes that make people hug, and Elena thought it was the sweetest thing she had ever heard. Logan watched them both with a look of mixed awe and fear. He knew, somehow, that this couldn't last like this forever. After they ate, Logan turned on a battery-powered radio and a soft melody began to play. It was an old song with simple lyrics and a warm tune. Lily yawned, curled up with a blanket on the couch, and quickly fell asleep. Elena looked at Logan with a tender smile. "She feels safe here, so do I." He reached out his hand naturally. "Want to dance?" She hesitated for a second, then got up and walked to him. Logan gently placed his hand on her waist. The two moved slowly across the kitchen floor as the candle flames flickered softly. It was as if the whole world had paused there, within those few square feet. With her head resting on his chest, Elena closed her eyes and whispered, "Why are you so good if you've had so little?" Logan didn't answer right away. His fingers moved across her back with the kind of tenderness only someone who's known pain can offer. He turned slowly and came face to face with Robert Delaney, an old friend of her father's. An investor, hotel heir, known for treating employees like disposable tools. He wore an expensive wool blazer completely out of place in that neighborhood, and a crooked smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then Logan kissed her forehead and answered in a low, steady voice. "Maybe because having little taught me what really matters." Elena held her breath. Those words felt like a hug to her soul. A part of her, the part that had always been surrounded by luxury but never affection, broke inside. She was going to say more. She wanted to tell him she was hiding something, that her last name carried more zeros than most people could imagine, that this simple house touched her more than any mansion ever had. But then the radio crackled. The music stopped. And at that moment, the streetlights flickered back on. Reality was pulsing again outside, but inside her, the conflict only grew. She slowly stepped back, looking into Logan's eyes with tenderness and pain. "Thank you for tonight." He only nodded, as if he understood there was something she still couldn't say. Elena left the house with Lily in her arms, crossing the still damp sidewalk. But before entering the small building where she was staying, she looked back. Logan was still at the door, watching, waiting, feeling, and without knowing. He was falling for a woman who could turn his world upside down. Midnight crept in slowly. over Cincinnati, as if it knew that time needed to slow down that night. Outside, the wind gently rustled the dry leaves scattered on the sidewalks. The city slept. But inside the little wooden house on Perry Street, two souls were wide awake. Elena came back. Half an hour after leaving with Lily in her arms, she returned. Alone, Logan opened the door, surprised, wearing a simple grey t-shirt and sweatpants. His slightly messy hair showed he had lain down but hadn't slept. Her eyes were steady, but there was something trembling in their depths. "I forgot to tell you something," she whispered, her voice almost hoarse. Logan didn't say a word. He just opened the door, fully giving her space. She walked in. No words, no explanations, just her presence, filling the room with something stronger than doubts. He closed the door slowly, like sealing a secret. In the living room, the dim candlelight still glowed gently even after the power had come back. The flickering light cast delicate shadows on the walls. The radio was off. There was no music, only their breathing. Logan walked toward her slowly. Elena took off her coat, revealing a thin, long-sleeved shirt and goosebumps, not from the cold, but from what was growing between them. When their eyes met, there was no hesitation. He touched her gently, like holding something precious. His fingers traced her face as if memorizing every detail. She closed her eyes and rested her forehead on his, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady sound of his heartbeat. "Are you sure?" he murmured, his voice respectful but full of emotion. Eleanor nodded slowly. "For the first time in my life, I am." They walked together to the small bedroom in the back of the house. It was simple, light-colored walls, a mattress with clean sheets, and an improvised shelf made from wooden crates. One of Logan's shirts hung on the chair next to the bed. It was all humble, but the space overflowed with safety. With truth, they lay down gently, as if every movement needed to be felt. The kisses were slow, filled with silence and intention. Their hands explored without rush. Their eyes stayed open, as if trying to imprint each other onto their souls. At some point, already tangled under the thin sheet, Elena cried, not with sobs, but quietly, with tears that ran to the pillow. Logan stopped. He looked at her with concern, gently touching her face with the back of his hand. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly. She took a deep breath and smiled, though her eyes were still wet. "It's the first time someone's touched me with care, Logan." He closed his eyes for a second, holding back the emotion that threatened to surface. Then he took her hand firmly, their fingers interlaced, and said, "It's because you're not just anyone, and I don't want to be just anyone either." Elena turned onto her side, fitting perfectly against his chest. Her head rested on his shoulder, and the world outside seemed to disappear. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. Not because of the house, not because of the bed, but because she was right there, with him. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, while the candle finally went out on its own, as if it knew its mission was complete. But the next day would bring something unexpected, because even true love isn't always free of tests, and Elena's past wasn't as far behind as she thought. The next morning arrived with a clear sky and a light breeze that seemed to promise a peaceful day. But what was coming would be anything but. Elena woke before the alarm, her body still warm from the night before, her face resting on the pillow that still held Logan's scent. She got dressed quietly, careful not to wake him, and left a simple note on the kitchen table, written in blue ink and strong handwriting. "I'll be back soon. I need a few hours to sort out the world. But my place is here." She left with a light heart, believing that, for the first time, she could face anything. The feeling beginning to grow between them gave her strength. At the store it was busy, end of the month, sales, crowded aisles. Elena was stacking boxes in the stockroom when she heard a familiar voice. It was arrogant, forced, dripping with entitlement. "Hey, I know you. You're Morales' daughter, right? The little princess who disappeared after the board scandal?" She froze. It felt more like a warning. "I don't know what you're talking about," Elena said, trying to stay in control. Robert laughed too loudly. "Of course you do. Heiress pretending to be a store clerk. This is going to make a great story over brunch with my friends." She felt the ground disappear beneath her. That night, Elena didn't return to Logan's house, and the next morning the headlines appeared. Scandal in Cincinnati. Heiress of the Morales Group pretends to be a local store employee. Rich and in disguise, the double life of Elena Morales. Social justice or emotional game. Strange loves in the lives of millionaires. The photos left no doubt. Her at the register, wearing the grey apron, smiling at Logan. One of them showed the two embracing on the sidewalk in front of the store. The caption was cruel. Love or social experiment. At the house on Perry Street, Logan read the news in silence, sitting on the couch with the printed paper in his grease-stained hands. Lily played in the living room, unaware of what was happening, but he wasn't. He felt like something had been ripped violently from his chest. That same afternoon, Elena showed up. She was pale, her hair down, eyes red. She wore simple clothes, but now everything about her seemed out of place there. "Logan," she began, but her voice broke. He didn't answer. He just stood there, as if holding back each word was a physical effort. "I tried to tell you, but I needed to know who I was outside of that world, away from the privileges. And you showed me that. But I swear, Logan, nothing we had was a lie." He took a step back. "You lied by omission. If it were anything else, I might understand. But you used my real life like a testing ground. Like I was part of some experiment from your soul." "No, that's not it," she said, eyes full of tears. "What we had was real to me," he said, his voice cracking at the end. "But now it just feels like a social experiment." Elena tried to get closer, but he stepped back again. "Don't come here again, Elena, at least not for now." She opened her mouth to say something, but no sound came out. She just nodded, eyes glassy. Then she turned and walked slowly down the street. The sun beat down on the asphalt, creating a painful contrast between the daylight and the darkness growing inside her. Logan stood still. The hand holding the newspaper was trembling. He looked at Lily, who was now watching him. From the couch, her eyes innocent and attentive. "Daddy, is the lady coming back?" He didn't know how to answer, but inside his chest, a part of him already missed what they had been, before the world knew who she was. Time seemed to slow down, as if each minute was heavier than the last. Days had passed since Elena left Logan's house, and in all that time there had been no message, no call, not even a shadow on the sidewalk. The silence between them was louder than any scream, and it hurt. Elena isolated herself in a small hotel room on the outskirts of the city. She wanted distance from the press, from the accusatory stares, from the cruel comments on websites and social media. But more than anything, she wanted to escape from herself. The bed was unmade, the lamp stayed on day and night, and the window was slightly open, letting in the cold wind, as if she wanted the world to punish her guilt a little. She held her phone like holding a shard of glass. She looked at the name Logan Carter on the screen, but couldn't bring herself to tap it. She had written countless messages, only to delete them before finishing. Across the city, Logan returned home with slumped shoulders and a distant gaze. His body followed the routine, but his soul wandered silently. The repair shop where he worked, looked grayer, the sounds more distant, the days longer. He came home, warmed up dinner, sat at the table with Lily. But something had changed. Elena's absence was felt in every corner of the house, like a scent that was no longer in the air, but stubbornly clung to memory. That night, after putting his daughter to bed, Logan sat on the couch, staring at nothing. He held one of the old packages she had left, a box of tea with a note still hidden inside. "Careful, this tea might warm more than just your hands." He closed his eyes and placed his hand over his heart. Everything inside him ached. It wasn't just the disappointment. It was everything she represented, a world he had learned to fear, to mistrust, to reject. Money, status, control. And yet, she wasn't like the others. Elena had brought color into his life, and now, everything was gray again. Lily, in her pajamas, silently entered the room and sat next to her father, holding one of her drawings. "Sorry, I couldn't sleep," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. Logan wrapped his arm around her, holding her tight. She stayed quiet for a few seconds, then asked, "Daddy, why did you let the lady who made you laugh go away?" The question pierced his chest like an arrow. He took a deep breath before answering, his voice hoarse and broken. "Because sometimes fear speaks louder than love." Lily looked at him, confused. "But love is prettier, and you smile less without her." Logan felt the tears threatening to fall, but he held them back. He kissed his daughter's forehead and whispered, "Maybe it's time to listen to the heart." The next morning, Logan woke up early. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching the soft light pour in through the window. The silence in the house no longer felt like peace. It felt like absence. And he knew that if he waited any longer, he'd lose something that, even though it hurt, had been real. He grabbed Elena's note, still folded, and put it in the pocket of his jacket. He got dressed, pulled on his boots, ran a hand through his hair and left. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but he knew he couldn't stay silent, because sometimes loving is braver than forgiving. What he didn't expect was that at that same moment, Elena was about to do something public, something that could change everything again. The auditorium at the Esperanza Foundation was packed that Saturday afternoon. Reporters, company employees, local small business owners, and members of the community crowded into rows of folding chairs. A panel with the Morales supermarket chain logo filled the back of the stage, but Elena wasn't there to talk about profits, strategy, or reputation. She was backstage, wearing a simple beige dress, her hair loose over her shoulders, and light makeup, just enough to hide the exhaustion from sleepless nights. But her eyes, they couldn't hide anything anymore. They carried the weight of regret, the ache of absence, and the urgency of someone who no longer wanted to run from her truth. The event coordinator signaled. It was time. Elena took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, under the flashes of photographers and the curious stares of the audience. The microphone was adjusted. The silence was complete. She looked around, her heart pounded. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady, but her eyes already wet. "Today, I was supposed to talk about innovation, about social responsibility, about the future of the company I'm part of, but I won't." Whispers spread through the audience. Elena raised her hand, asking for silence, and continued, "Because what really matters can't be found in reports. It's not in spreadsheets, or in the power of a last name." She paused, as if gathering the courage to go on. "For months I lived among people who had never heard the name Morales, and it was there, in that simple neighborhood, with dim lights and honest voices, that I was loved by someone who had no idea who I was." Her voice wavered. The first tears fell, but she didn't hide them. "And it was the most honest love of my life." A respectful silence filled the auditorium. Elena looked directly into the camera in front of her, as if speaking to just one person, Logan Carter. If you're watching this, know that I choose you. No titles, no fortune, no weight of an empire. I choose you with everything I am, with my broken parts, and the ones I'm still learning to heal. She held the microphone with both hands, like it was her last chance to reach for something she couldn't afford to lose. And if you'll give me the chance, I want to start over, from scratch, where everything was always real. The broadcast ended, but her words echoed, and they spread far. For days, the video circulated on social media, news sites, message, in groups. Some people criticized, others were deeply moved, but Logan watched. He watched the broadcast lying on the couch, Lily beside him, holding his hand tightly as Elena spoke. When it ended, the girl looked at her father with a smile, full of hope. "Are you going to let her be alone again, Daddy?" Logan didn't answer, but deep down, the answer was already decided. 3 days later, on a cold and sunny morning, Elena was in her apartment, sitting on the living room rug with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She was trying to answer emails, but her fingers trembled too much. Then she heard it. A knock. At the door. 3 firm taps. She got up slowly, unsure if she should hope. She walked to the door, heart racing, and opened it. It was him. Logan stood there in his denim jacket, his beard a little grown out, and his eyes full of something she had never seen so clearly before. Tenderness. Truth. She held her breath. The world stopped. "I saw it all," he said. Every word. She tried to speak, but he went on. "You chose me, even after everything, so now it's my turn." He stepped closer, gently took her hand and murmured, "I choose you too, Elena. And I want to start over. With you." She couldn't hold back. The tears came like spring rain. Silent, intense, necessary. And without saying another word, she embraced him like someone finally returning home after being away too long. At that door, between the cold from the street and the warmth of his chest, Elena finally understood. It didn't matter where it had started, or the name she carried. What mattered was who chose to be there, for real, but on the other side of the city, someone was watching everything from afar. A reporter, holding a folder full of documents, and a secret that still hadn't been revealed, and that new threat could put everything at risk again. From that silent reunion at her apartment door, Elena and Logan decided not to run. Not to hide, just to live, one day at a time, without masks, without rushing. The reconciliation wasn't perfect. There were pauses in the middle of sentences, uncomfortable silences, and even lost glances that carried the weight of recent wounds. But what they had now was stronger than fear. It was a choice. They truly started over. On Saturday mornings, Logan would show up with a makeshift bouquet, flowers picked from the garden of an elderly neighbor he helped carry groceries for. Elena smiled as she received them, placing them in empty glass jars, decorating the kitchen with simplicity and color. On Sundays, they had picnics at the park where it all began. Lily ran between the trees with a kite made of newspaper and tape, while Logan laid out the checkered blanket on the grass and Elena pulled sandwiches from the basket. "It's not 5-star restaurant food," he'd say. "It's the most honest food I've ever eaten," she'd reply. Sometimes Lily would fall asleep in the back seat on the way home, and they would sit together in front of Logan's house, not wanting the day to end, just watching the streetlights and the neighbors going about their simple routines. At night, after Lily was asleep, Elena curled up on the couch with her head on his lap, barefoot under a light blanket, the sound of the TV playing softly in the background. It was on one of those nights, with the world quiet outside and her heart calm inside, that Elena said, in a low voice, her eyes lost on the ceiling, "You didn't save me, Logan. You reminded me who I am." He looked at her with that calm smile, the same one he'd offered her in the rain, on the sidewalk, at the beginning of it all. He ran his fingers through her hair and replied, "You taught me that love doesn't need palaces, just courage." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the words settle in her chest like a promise. The courage now lived in both of them. It was quiet, unspoken, but strong. They started making plans, not about mansions or luxury trips, but about a home that smelled like fresh coffee and always had its door open to anyone in need. Elena decided to use her position to reform company policies, starting with the store employees, fair wages, community childcare, educational scholarships. Logan suggested a community garden project created in partnership with public schools, and together they came up with the idea of turning part of an abandoned store into a cultural center for children in the neighborhood. The new family wasn't perfect, but it was real. Lily started calling Eleanor my almost mom, and later, simply Mom Elena, without anyone ever asking her to. It was natural, like everything that grows with love. But while the days passed with laughter and hope, someone was watching that new beginning with different eyes. Robert Delaney, the man who had exposed Elena, sat in a luxurious office, reviewing documents and smiling with malice. Let's see how much that love is worth when the truth is laid bare. At the bottom of the folder was an old contract, a forgotten clause, and a possible accusation that could put everything at risk, because the past wasn't finished collecting its dues. 2 years had passed since the day Elena opened that door and found Logan standing there, ready to start over. And what had seemed impossible back then became the foundation of a new life. The Roots of Tomorrow Foundation was born months later from a conversation by the sink while the two of them washed dishes after a simple dinner. It wasn't about charity. It was about dignity, about planting possibilities in barren ground. Elena used part of her inheritance to fund the project, but it was Logan who gave it shape and soul. With his practical ideas, his community-driven heart, and his desire to turn pain into purpose. Today, the once abandoned warehouse in downtown Cincinnati has become a vibrant center. There, single mothers find support and employment. Young people from the outskirts learn about entrepreneurship. Local small producers have space on the shelves of stores that used to carry only giant brands. The Morales chain is no longer the same. After restructuring the board and cutting old contracts, Elena redesigned everything from the ground up. More than products, the stores now offer respect, and it started with her, with Logan, with Lily. On that spring morning, a local TV crew was preparing a special report on the new phase of the company and the foundation. The makeshift studio was set up in the renovated location in the neighborhood where Logan and Elena first met. The same store, the same sidewalk, now filled with new faces, new stories. Elena sat in front of the cameras in a simple light yellow dress, her hair tied in a soft bun, and a necklace with the word Roots hanging around her neck. Her eyes were bright, her voice calm. The journalist asked, "Elena, you once had everything and lost almost all of it. What did you learn from that?" She took a deep breath. The answer came slowly. "I learned that real love doesn't wear labels. It doesn't ask what you do or how much you make. Real love carries bags with you in the rain, even without knowing who you are." Her voice faltered at the end. A tear fell, and she didn't hide it. The camera cut to Logan, on the other side of the store, arranging shelves alongside Lily, now 10 years old, taller, laughing as she balanced a basket of apples. They walked toward Elena. Logan held a small bouquet, simple flowers from the foundation's community garden. He handed it to her with a knowing smile. Flowers for the most beautiful manager this store's ever had. Elena smiled, moved, and stood up. Lily took both their hands and led them to the front of the store, where a huge mural displayed photos of families helped by the foundation, with a phrase painted in red across the top. Family isn't about where you come from, it's about who chooses to stay. Logan looked at Elena and said, his eyes filled with tears, family, not by name, but by choice. Elena rested her head on his shoulder, and Lily hugged them from both sides. The camera pulled back slowly, capturing the scene of three hearts, joined together in the middle of a supermarket that was no longer just a business. It was a symbol of transformation, of healing, of everything money could never buy. But outside, parked discreetly across the street, Robert Delaney's black car still waited. And in the briefcase on the passenger seat were documents that could reopen wounds time hadn't fully healed, because even true love sometimes gets tested more than once. So what did you think of this story? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. I'd love to know how this journey touched you. If this story moved your heart, like the video, share it with someone special and subscribe to the channel. That really helps more people discover these stories about love, resilience, and fresh starts. And before you go, I've picked another emotional story that's going to move you even deeper, full of surprises, hard choices, and an ending that's sure to warm your soul. Just click and keep going with us.